AEW has had many wrestlers come and go in its 5-year history, and whilst most wrestlers usually leave due to contract expiry or budget cuts, some wrestlers are let go from AEW due to their own actions, and it could be said that they ruined their own AEW careers. And today we're going to discuss a few of those cases as we look at wrestlers who went out sad in AEW, so like, subscribe and join me as we discuss AEW wrestlers who killed their own careers. Let's begin. On May 9th, 2019, it was announced that Jack Evans had signed for All Elite Wrestling. Jack Evans had an extensive career on the indies from Ring of Honor, Wrestling Society X, Lucha Underground, AAA, and various promotions all across the world, and this opportunity was a deserved one for sure. He would make his debut alongside Angelico at Double or Nothing as they faced the Best Friends in a losing effort in one of the more underrated AEW matches. Evans and Angelico would wrestle at the Fight for the Fallen pay-per-view and at All Out, both of which were losing efforts as well, and they would come to be known as the Hybrid 2 by the time AEW's TV debut had came around. Straight off the bat though, Jack Evans and Angelico were pretty much relegated to Dark and treated as jobbers who would only occasionally appear on Dynamite, and they were appearing to lose. And that was pretty much the story for them for the rest of 2019 and all of 2020. In early 2021 though, the Hardy Family Office stable was formed, a stable led by Matt Hardy featuring Jack Evans, Angelico, Private Party, The Butcher, Blade, Bunny, and others. It was a completely pointless and directionless stable that really didn't elevate anyone in the group, and all the people in the group were pretty much jobbers, especially Evans and Angelico, who didn't pick up a TV victory for the entirety of 2021 and were just bodies in this pointless group. Jack Evans went 0-7 on TV that year and went months at a time without seeing TV time, even though he was actually getting semi-regular TV time at the start of the year. And this could be because he got himself heat backstage after he botched a Phoenix Splash on Preston Vance on an AEW Dark episode, after he landed his elbow in his face and busted him open the hard way, with this match taking place on March 2021 and his next TV match not coming until 4 months later. The biggest thing Jack Evans did in his AEW career in this year was wrestle Orange Cassidy in a hair versus hair match on the 1st of October Rampage, which Cassidy won and Evans had his head shaved. And this would end up being his penultimate TV match for AEW as he wrestled in a 16-man tag on Dynamite the next week, and that was it for him as he'd do a couple more dark matches, and then in April of 2022, it was revealed that Evans would be departing AEW after not being seen for months as his contract wasn't being renewed. Jack Evans following his departure went on to say that he was grateful for the time with AEW, but due to various factors such as injuries sustained and COVID travel restrictions, that he got, quote, lazy and soft in AEW. Overall, Jack Evans' AEW career was quite uneventful, but to be honest, Jack Evans in AEW is something I was very happy to see, as in his prime he never really got a TV shot, so he deserved this break, even if it wasn't anything to write home about. Shanna made her AEW debut on the October 30th, 2019 edition of AEW Dynamite, and it was later reported on that she had signed with AEW and became All Elite. Prior to AEW, Shanna had mainly worked the European wrestling scene, but also did some stuff with TNA and Stardom. She was an early star of the AEW women's division and would actually get decent TV time compared to a lot of the other women on the roster. But when the pandemic kicked in, it meant that Shanna wasn't able to travel to AEW tapings, and so she took an 8-month absence from wrestling for AEW. However, when Shanna did return, it seemed as though AEW didn't really know what to do with her, and her return wasn't really treated as a big deal whatsoever, but rather a side thought, as she would return on AEW Dark instead of TV, and Dark would be the main show that you would see Shanna appearing on. She returned in November of 2020, and her next TV appearance wasn't until 2 months later in January of 2021, losing to Britt Baker on Dynamite, and after that, it was right back to AEW Dark. And she would keep having matches on Dark up until April of 2021, when suddenly those matches and appearances just stopped and Shanna would suddenly disappear from AEW. 2 months later in June, it was reported that Shanna was gone from AEW due to contract expiry and had actually indeed been gone since April. And a Fight for Select report would state that AEW's decision to not renew her contract came after allegations about Shanna mistreating extras had come out. The report stated that there was issues with her and some of the other wrestlers, mainly extras, who had issues with the way she treated them. It was all pretty vague and never really followed up on, and as far as I'm aware, Shanna never responded to these reports either, and everyone kinda just moved on as AEW continued on, and Shanna is back on the indies. Shanna's AEW run was very uneventful even though it started out decent, and she was mainly relegated to Dark, which is where she'd have to work with a lot of extras, and obviously we all know now what allegedly happened there. Ivelisse Velez began training to be a wrestler at age 15 in Puerto Rico, debuting in the World Wrestling Council in the year of 2004. In March of 2011, Ivelisse Velez was announced as one of the 14 contestants for the 5th season of WWE Tough Enough. She came 7th in the show after she was forced to withdraw from injury. Up until that point, Ivelisse had not been included in the bottom 3 for any of the episodes and had been doing pretty well in the series. But despite not winning, Ivelisse was signed by the WWE in November 11th, 2011 and assigned to FCW, where she would debut under the name of Sophia Cortez. And when FCW rebranded to NXT, she was there as well. She made her NXT TV debut on the July 4th episode of NXT on 2012, defeating Paige of all people on her debut. She even wrestled main roster member Natalya on the July 25th episode of NXT. But then in August of 2012, she announced that she'd been released from her contract. She claimed she was released because she was one of the first people to talk about Bill DeMott's misconduct and reported it to the office. And following her release, Ivelisse would become a stalwart and a workhorse of the independent scene, wrestling for numerous companies throughout America and the world. She wrestled for TNA, AAA, Shine, various independent wrestling promotions, and of course, in 2014, she debuted for Lucha Underground. And Ivelisse had a very successful career in Lucha Underground. She was a 2-time trios champion after teaming up with Angelico and Son of Havoc, and had overall a really great career in the company. However, something that had irked Ivelisse her entire career was her backstage attitude, and it's something that really halted her career and hurt her prospects, and that especially came into play in All Elite Wrestling. Ivelisse debuted for AEW in 2019 and was eventually signed to a contract for the company. She actually had a bit of early success as she was part of the Women's Tag Team Cup in 2020, where her and Diamante were the winners of the tournament. Herself and Diamante defeated the Nightmare Sisters on the August 22, 2020 episode of AEW Dynamite. On the September 11th, 2020 episode of AEW Dynamite, Ivelisse would challenge Thunder Rosa for the NWA Women's World Championship, and this is the match where everything went to pot. In this match, you can see Ivelisse visibly annoyed with Thunder Rosa and no-selling her offense. Following this, there was obviously a load of backstage drama between Thunder Rosa and Ivelisse was essentially relegated to Dark. In fact, she only wrestled once more on Dynamite following this. That was until she was released from AEW in April of 2021. Ivelisse blames Thunder Rosa for dragging her name through the mud backstage and backstage politics as the reason why she was released from AEW. And she also claims that the no-selling and the shoot fight that they had in their match was Thunder Rosa's fault after she forgot what spots were going to happen, and that led to the fight. She stated the following on an interview with Chris Van Vliet. When the day came, she didn't want to do anything. I'm like, what? No, this match will be awesome, but I'm also trying to knock it out the park. Even at the start with the slap, we went over that 1,000,000 times. We knew. She'd forget what comes after. I had no choice but to nudge her face. That's when the shoot stuff happened. I trained MMA, you can't pull that on me. I just didn't want to allow that negativity. I didn't want to be pulled into that. She tried and tried though. Also, I was already signed. Why would I do that? Somehow, I was made into the bad guy though. There is nothing that can be done about that, but the bigger issue is not understanding what kind of an asset I could be. Since her release from AEW, Ivelisse wrestles far less than what she used to wrestle on the independent scene, transferring her time between Mexico and the US, wrestling for various promotions between the two, but once again, is nowhere near as active as she used to be. Ironically enough, a year or two later, Thunder Rosa would get into her own controversy for allegedly sandbagging in a match, which caught her heat from the rest of the AEW women's locker room. Another story for the future maybe. That's it from me though, guys. Be sure to smash the like button on this video, subscribe for more wrestling content, and comment down below what videos you want to see next. I'll see you all in the future. Goodbye, and keep on rolling.